Boerne Radio 103.9 FM. Coming up at 11:30 is The Power of Perseverance with Glenn Boehm. But right now is Ceasefire with Dale Adams and Ron Cisneros. The following is sponsored by the Boerne Bookshop, and this is Boerne Radio.
Hey, Ceasefire listeners. I want to let you know about an exciting event at the Boerne Bookshop on October 12th from 1 to 3. Come meet some real Texas Rangers that will be there to share some stories with you and sign some books. We have some fun events, and Dale, I'm sure, will have some drinks or snacks to give away and some items to raffle, and we hope that you'll join us.
Yeah, we'll have all our Ranger books out.
All right.
It should be fun.
Okay, October 12th from 1 to 3.
Welcome to Ceasefire, where civics meets civility and engagement meets empowerment. Ceasefire is hosted by former Boerne ISD trustee and owner of the Boerne Bookshop, Dale Adams, and by former Boerne City Council member and local insurance agent, Ron Cisneros.
Welcome to Ceasefire with Dale Adams.
And Ron Cisneros.
Brought to you by the Boerne Bookshop. And today our topic is, Ron?
First impressions and lasting impressions.
And when we talked about that, I was thinking about more of how we present ourselves. Not just the first time, but...
Always right.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about this topic a lot since we came up with this idea for the show. And just to remind everybody, we like to focus on civility and civics and civic engagement. And the civility part, under that, we always put in communication, because that's a big part of how we get to civility. And under communication, there are nonverbal ways that we communicate, and our appearance, our mannerisms, our posture, they all say something about us. And it's real interesting as I think about this, because I have these proverbs or these old sayings in my mind: do not judge a book by its cover. And yet it's our human nature to do that very thing. And here we are this morning talking about judging a book by its cover, essentially.
Yeah. Whenever we go out into society, we are constantly socializing. Two people together is a social interaction. And that interaction could be with words, but it's also through visuals and behaviors. All of that is part of our socialization. Mm-hmm. And we are very social animals. And so every minute we're together, we're doing that. So I think sometimes people consciously think that they're not socializing with other people. But subconsciously, everybody knows it, because nobody goes out and walks around in the same clothes that they wear to bed. When you're going to bed, you want to be comfortable. When you're hanging out at home, you're comfortable. That's the only thing that matters. You may like the colors, but when you go out on the street in public, everybody changes their appearance. And not just with clothes, with everything. People walk a little bit different. When you're at home, you're slouched down, you sit down and watch the TV, you slouch. When you're at a dinner in public, you sit differently.
Right.
You know, everything's different. So people know that subconsciously.
Right. Yeah, you might, for example, at home when you're eating, you might have your elbows on the table. You might have your telephone propped up in front of you, but you'd never do that, or you should never do that when you're out in public.
And that's the key. How should we behave in public?
Right.
Should we behave the way we do at home, or should we present ourselves with a purpose? And I think that's the gist of how a lot of our conversations went, is we felt sometimes people don't understand what they're projecting. When they think they're projecting one thing, they're projecting something different.
Yeah, and so we get the modern message today is that be a free spirit, don't really care what other people think about you, love yourself, do your own thing. And sometimes I think that we lead people astray with that message. And some of the old wisdoms that we got from our mothers or our dads are probably more in line with how we should behave. If we want to get a date, if we want to get a job, if we want to get married, then those things do matter to a degree. Brushing your teeth, combing your hair, wearing nice clothes, not going to your prospective employer with barbecue sauce on your shirt, that sort of thing.
Yeah. It doesn't mean to say that everybody has to dress the same or have the same fashion sense, because you go to different countries and people dress differently. Dressing up in India is very different from dressing up here in the U.S., but there are some commonalities. One is clothes that are clean.
Right.
one is preparing your how do I want to say it? Carrying a poise that's I don't know the best way to put it, but the way you carry yourself, shoulders back, stand up and be forthright. Those carry across culture, so those are deeper than just what some fashion is. So what we're talking about is not just sticking to a fashion.
Right. And I think there's some other things too related to each profession that are important. For example, you probably wouldn't select a financial advisor if he had holes in the bottoms of his shoes.
Yes, it indicates his success.
Right. Yeah, or if he had a car that was, say, 25 years old and strung together with duct tape, that would probably tell you that's not the guy I want to take financial advice from. Right or wrong, that's the impression that you're going to get.
Yeah.
A doctor that smokes is probably not a doctor that you're going to pay much attention to, right? I mean, especially if he's a cardiologist. And I'm going to ignore him.
Yeah,
you know?
Practice what you preach there.
Right,
buddy.
exactly. And so I think we look at things and we make judgments, right or wrong, based on that initial appearance or even an ongoing appearance. And I think to make this relatable, let's talk about your bookstore and that old saying, don't judge a book by its cover. But I think you could probably tell everybody that the people that are marketing the books for you to carry in your store that you want to in turn sell to your consumers, they spend a lot of time on the covers.
Absolutely,
right?
yes.
They know that people are doing that very thing. They're looking at that cover. And if you are a book, the first thing that you want, even before being read, the first thing that you want is for somebody to have enough interest in you to pick you up.
Yes.
And put you on Dale's counter.
Yeah.
So that you get rung up.
Yeah.
Then the next challenge is getting read. But that challenge doesn't happen until the first challenge is met, which is piquing somebody's interest and getting picked up.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're talking about.
In the social sense, that would be, do you want somebody to take you seriously? Do you want them to think of you as an adult with an opinion that is valid? Then you dress appropriately. And there's a language there. And I don't know exactly what it is, but there's definitely a language there. And some things, the way you present yourself and dress, are going to say, I'm serious. I know what I'm talking about. I have an opinion about that, or I know the facts. Whatever you're trying to get across, your dress is going to say something about that, whether positive or negative.
Right.
And you need to recognize that the important thing isn't how you project, it's how the other person perceives you. So you may think that jeans with holes in them project, I think things have value and I wear them to the very end. But somebody else may perceive that as, wow, you're not a very hard worker because you can't afford nice jeans. So think about how you're being perceived rather than how you're trying to project, because being perceived is the important side of it.
Yeah, perception's that's a great word. As I was coming up with notes for the show, one of the things that I thought about was the old proverb about not judging a book by its cover. That's an instruction guide for us to look deeper into the book.
Right.
So that's us looking out. But when we tell people, when we tell our children, hey, be careful about how you present yourself because you're being judged, that's an instruction that's guiding us for people looking into us.
Right.
So now the view is different, right? And as the old Stoics would tell us, we only have control over our thoughts. That's the only thing we have. We cannot control somebody else's thoughts. And so when we have that in mind, and I'm not saying we should dwell on that or spend a lot of time on that because we don't have control over it, but it's important to remember that and recognize that and say, okay, I cannot control how Dale is going to think about me, but I'm going to make sure that his first impression isn't a bad one. You know, that I have control over. What I put on in the morning, whether or not I brush my teeth or comb my hair or shave or look presentable, that's all on me. Now, what happens after that, I have no control over, but I'm going to do my best to make sure that I'm not putting the worst foot forward, but rather the best foot forward.
Right.
Right.
So what you're saying, though, is even though we aren't supposed to judge a book by its cover, a book should seek to have a good cover.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I wish I had enough smarts to say it that simply. I think I'll just see myself to the door and let you take the rest of the show.
I got a quote here from Oscar Wilde because
Okay.
I have this issue with my kids sometimes, my boys. He said that a well-tied tie is the first serious step in life. And I think that sort of speaks to you're willing to go to some effort to learn something that has no practical use in life in order to present yourself to the world as a serious person.
I like that.
Nobody wears ties anymore, hardly. And every time we go to a wedding, I have to show my sons how to tie a tie again. I shouldn't say that.
You know, I've got a friend of mine that works for Men's Warehouse. He's on the real estate division, so he's acquiring property or leases. But they've made a big shift in what they carry because suits just aren't the thing anymore. So they have a lot more of the business casual clothing, and they focus on tuxedo rentals and whatnot for weddings or for proms or things of that nature. But I just lost my train of thought. You're going to edit that, right? What was I going to say? Where was I going with this?
Okay. And I think this is a good time for a break. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron, brought to Boerne Bookshop. We're going to take a quick break. Ron's going to collect his thoughts, and we will start right back up. Boerne has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Boerne Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Boerne Bookshop. We pride ourselves on finding what you are looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Boerne Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Boerne at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Boerne Bookshop. Welcome back to Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. And Ron, what were you talking about?
We were talking about a friend of mine works for the Men's Warehouse and how people aren't wearing suits anymore. And I'm one of those people. When I started my career over 30 years ago with John Hancock, it was suit and tie. That was expected. And you wanted to give off an impression of being a financial professional, even if you were in your early 20s and didn't have two nickels to rub together. You still wanted to give off that impression. Nowadays, I make a joke that the only people in Kendall County that wear suits are attorneys in front of a judge and morticians. And I don't know too many people that want to be put into any one of those groups. Sorry, no offense to the attorney friends I have, but I hear the term, what is it, hill country chic, in reference to the starched jeans and the button-down long sleeve shirt, but it still creates that image in your mind of a professional, albeit like you were saying earlier about the manner of dress in other countries. It's what we're accustomed to here, and it's still better than saying, "Hey, I'm a financial professional and I'm in a t-shirt, sandals, and workout shorts."
Right. So it's a slightly different fashion language, but it's still trying to say the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this discussion between us comes about from seeing people that we don't think dress up as much as they should just to be out in public. And here's another quote from Mr. T. Now, this is a while ago. So maybe this is a new fashionable thing, but at the time, it wasn't so much, and he was trying to change it, push back futilely, actually. But he said that my mama didn't clean up floors so I could be a thug, so I could wear my pants down. And his point was, this is when hanging pants started getting to be a thing.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, my mom worked hard, put me through school, and he became a very successful actor. She didn't do that so that I could dress poorly, which is what he thought that was, which a lot of people still do.
We go out to eat quite frequently, at least once a week, and you and I will comment on this because we see people walking around. And so here's an example. I want to go ahead and throw some things out there that this is going to be uncomfortable because I think I'd rather talk about abortion before I talk about this, because I know this will be a lightning rod subject. But you'll hear, let's just say women say, there aren't any good guys out there, right? There aren't any upright guys. There aren't any honest guys. And yet those same women are dressed in clothes that are sexually suggestive, right? There's no modesty. Those little Lululemon pants that they wear show everything, like every last detail. And I wonder, when I hear someone in that mode of dress expressing a disdain for the modern man. I'm like, but look at you. Or when I hear ladies say, guys, cargo shorts are out. Do away with the cargo shorts. And I'm like, yeah, I agree with you. They're out. But so are all the things that you're wearing. And I'll pick on the guys now. And this is a personal thing for me. If you're...
The show's getting really...
Yeah, this is getting
personal,
intense now. Yeah.
subjective here.
If you're a guy and you're anywhere away from a body of water, like you're not at the lake, you're not at the river, you're not at the beach, and you're not by your pool, why are you wearing sandals? I hate sandals.
Oh, I wear sandals sometimes.
I know you do. Yeah, I've seen that. I've judged harshly. I hate them. But that's me. But it's I'm getting way off subject here. But there are things that we're complaining about, right? And we're not looking at the way that we're presenting ourselves to other people.
True.
We're just that judgment is going out, but it's not coming in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from a female's point of view,
Here we go. I like this.
it's frustrating at times for me myself, where you are dressing more modestly, and then I have a husband who is more of that cowboy type of. He's a paramedic, does firearms, that kind of lifestyle. And it comes across for other people or other women of that it must be nice mentality, or you don't have to, everything is adapted to you and you don't have to change, but everything around you revolves around you. And I think a part of that is a generational thing.
Yeah.
I think it's my being a millennial, we were raised in a very strict household, so you want to be more relaxed when it comes to your children, but it's doing a disservice.
Right.
In all actuality. And how are you expected to have those same morals and that same kind of manly figure when you're doing something completely different? And that's not attractive.
Right.
And that's frustrating when it makes other women look bad. And it's, look how you're dressed. It just makes us look bad in general. And that whole lot more in other states. I would say I was in Washington and Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
And that everywhere, which made me look like the outcast. And I was the crazy one for dressing in a flannel and blue jeans and boots.
Yeah. It really is like a language. And,
It really is.
But we're not teaching anybody our language. And there's different dialects, and it's different in all different places. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. There's I'm gonna do two things here. First, I'm gonna do the last thing on women's dressing, and then we'll leave that subject. So Coco Chanel, who everybody should know, was some famous lady that came up with a perfume a long time ago, I think, or something like that. She said, dress shabbily and they remember the dress. Dress impeccably and they remember the woman. And that's about dressing so that people notice you, and not so that they notice, ooh, you're not quite there, or you're not quite up to it. But you're bringing up this way of women dress, and there's the hemline index theory. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Oh, okay. It's an economic theory.
All right.
And it was started in the mid-20s, and it's about the hemline on women corresponds to how the economic outlook is and the stock market performs.
Holy smokes.
As the economy does well and the stock market does well, it was created by some stock market economists, the hemlines go up. And when things get more downturn, they go down. And this was markedly happened in the 20s and in the 30s. Because in the 20s, and the theory is that hose came out and they wanted to show off their hose, but then the depression happened and they didn't, and so the hemlines went down. But I think it's more of when economic times are good, that people want to show off. They want to dress up. They want to do the new fashion. And interestingly, after COVID and the lockdowns, hemlines went back up again. And I think that ties in with people are free. They want to go out. They want to go show off. They're socially interacting. They're speaking that language again. And so hemlines went back up again. And it's interesting. It's part of the social language manifesting itself, showing how things are. And I think it all gets down to the socialization between people and what we want people to think of us.
That's a little disappointing to think that modesty is tied into the economy, but
It's just reflected.
Yeah. Let me throw in another thought, and I don't want to get us down on a different bunny trail, but I remember many times in my life as someone that would be described as a Latino. I never saw myself as Hispanic or Latino, but that is a term that they use to describe whoever they are, describe people like me. And I hated the notion of affirmative action or any kind of notion that somehow I was disadvantaged in a way and therefore needed assistance. I've always disliked that. Didn't seem just, it didn't seem fair, and in fact, it felt like an insult. You're not quite as smart as these other folks over here that we call Anglos. And so we're going to lower the bar for you a little bit, because you'll never catch up to them. That's insulting. Likewise, I think, if I were a woman and you know all of the historical inherent disadvantages that come with being a woman, and one of them is that sexuality, that your sex, right?
Yeah.
For a modern woman to know all of those things and then say, I am still going to convey that in my appearance. I am still going to show off my cleavage.
Yeah.
And be frank. Doesn't that seem like that you're playing a part in that very thing that sort of denigrates you and takes you down a notch?
I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I think there's something to that. But I think there's something deeper to it. Now, in my understanding, women tend to be more relationship focused, and men tend to be more goal focused. Now, that's not always true, but in general, I think women have a stronger emphasis on relationships and men have a stronger emphasis on goals. And I think that reflects in what you're talking about with the way men and women dress differently. Women are more conscious of how they dress and how that projects and interacts with other people. Now, some of them are trying to project something that they think everybody wants to see, the sexuality. Whereas men, they're goal focused, they're projecting accomplishment. Mm-hmm. The business suit is about as boring as you can get, but supposedly it tells people you're successful. It doesn't tell anybody that you're good looking or that you're strong or anything like that, but it shows or it indicates an achievement. So I think it's a deeper thing than just a superficial, some women are dressing to show off their sexuality. I think it's, some of them do that, but I think it's just they're communicating in a more obvious way.
I also think something important is just idolizing like celebrities in general too, and what are role models nowadays. All on TV are women who barely have anything on, and that is shown as acceptable because it's on TV, it's being shown, it's at award shows, it's at all the people who have money and cars and mansions and are successful are wearing basically nothing.
Yeah. And I think they've objectified themselves, or they've painted themselves in the wrong light. And I want to say, for the record, that men do this too.
100%.
We put in outward displays of things that really don't matter. And what Dale and I are talking about are the appearances that do matter, those first impressions, and conveying yourself in a way that displays your values, rather than carrying yourself in a way that you think appeals to a sort of lost world, right? Or a world going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's just it. We all use our eyes, and most of us don't look any deeper than the surface. And that's just, it's important to acknowledge that.
Speaking about judging books by its covers, or judging books by their covers, you have a book there that I've been looking at, and I've made a judgment that I want to read that. Tell us about that.
Okay, this is not exactly about appearances, but it's close, but I like this concept better, actually. It's called The Proximity Principle by Ken Coleman, and it's about who you surround yourself with, which is the next level of presentation. And there's a saying that I told my kids all, is that you are the average of your 5 closest friends. And it just says that the people you surround yourself with, those are the people you end up using as role models. Those are the people that you start using their language of fashion or in real life. Those are the people that you compare yourself when you are accomplishing something. And it just talks about that it's important to surround yourself with people going in the direction you want to go in, people aspiring to what you want to aspire, not necessarily the individual item, but just, are you an ambitious person? You should surround yourself with ambitious people. Are you a nurturing person? You should seek out some friends that are nurturing. And so it's a pretty neat book. And my son, actually, Alex, has actually acknowledged to me that when he went into high school, before high school, he was a good student. He's a smart kid, but he never really cared much about going to college or anything. And then he went to high school, and his friends changed. He joined the tennis team and ended up being surrounded by all the top kids in the school. And I don't know if this is still the case, but at the time, the tennis team all had some of the top kids. And I don't know, I'm not sure why that was the case. But then suddenly he just supercharged, and he ended up excelling at everything, taking advanced classes and everything, and he continued that through college and became very successful. And a lot of that came about because he changed his outlook on life, because he was surrounding himself with almost hyper-successful people.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting book.
Awesome. And it's available at the Boerne Bookshop.
That it is.
Along with The Gentleman from Moscow.
Yes.
Amor Tolls.
Yes.
Thank you all for joining us again this week, and we look forward to seeing you all next week.
Okay. Bye. Boerne has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Boerne Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Boerne Bookshop, and we pride ourselves on finding what you're looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Boerne Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Boerne, at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Boerne Bookshop.
Boerne Radio 103.9 FM. Now let's head over to the Patrick Heath Public Library with Miss Constance for Children's Story Time. As the Patrick Heath Library is open today from 10 to 4, this is Boerne Radio.